Hi, everyone. I'm Olivia Mattis. Delighted to welcome you on behalf of the Sousa Mendes Foundation to another one of our Sunday programs on rescue, resistance, and hope, giving you beautiful stories week after week, we think. Today, we bring us back to our own story, our own hero, Aristides de Sousa Mendes. Here behind me is a street that we named after him in Jerusalem in 2022. And so you can go to Jerusalem and see Sousa Mendes Square. It's a whole square. We have a film that we show. If you want to see the film, let us know, and we'll send you the link. And today we are featuring a wonderful book, and this is a book I've been really waiting for. In other words, a book for this particular age group, which we'll ask our speakers what age group that is, but young readers. This is a book that tells the story of our hero. It's called The World Entire. And on the back of the book, you see why it's called that. This is from the Talmud. He who saves a single life saves the world entire. And it's just a delightfully illustrated, delightfully written book about the amazing rescue action of Aristides de Sousa Mendes, how this man saved total strangers at great risk to himself, and in fact paid a very heavy price. It's quite a challenge to portray this in a way that works for young readers, where it doesn't scare them, it inspires them. It's just wonderful. So here's how it's going to work. First, you're going to meet the author. Her name is Elizabeth Brown. She's authored a number of children's books that she will tell you about. Um, and so she's going to do a reading from the book, and then she's going to explain to you why she wrote this book and what her process was. Then she's going to do another reading. Then you will meet the artist, Melissa Castrillón. Now, Elizabeth comes to us from the Chicago area. Melissa is in the UK, but through the magic of Zoom, we're all together. So Melissa is a prolific writer, a prolific illustrator of children's books. She's written 3 herself and illustrated numerous others. She's also a fine artist in her own right. So she's going to take you through her process of how she started with Elizabeth's text and turned it into these beautiful images. So without further ado, let me turn the floor over to Elizabeth Brown. Elizabeth, please take the floor.
Thank you so much, Olivia and the Sousa Mendes Foundation for having me speak to you today about the book and to read some excerpts from it. It is truly a pleasure and an honor. Thank you. So I'm just going to go ahead and start to talk about, read the story from the beginning. And I'll just go ahead with it. So Aristides de Sousa Mendes lived with his wife and their many children in Portugal, where Europe reaches out into the ocean. There, in a little town encircled by sun-baked hills, laughter warmed his family's days as much as the sun, and music lit their nights as much as the moon. On Thursdays, Aristides opened his kitchen to the children of the town. The town wasn't a wealthy place, but Aristides' door was always open. He baked bread and made soup and served them at his table on chilly days. Aristides was a diplomat. Though he sometimes lived in other countries, Portugal was his home, and some days he drove from there all the way across the north of Spain to his office in Bordeaux, France. It was his job to review requests from anyone who wanted to enter Portugal from there. A family going on vacation? Yes. A businessman with automobiles to sell in Porto? Yes. A French diplomat on his way to see the Prime Minister in Lisbon? Yes. Aristides signed his name and stamped each of their passports. Ambassadors and even presidents from other countries often visit consulates in Portugal. They danced in suits and gowns at fancy balls. Their world was proper, polished, and perfect. But storm clouds were gathering on Bordeaux's azure horizon, darker than any seen before. Fighter planes roared overhead. War was breaking out all over Europe. As German soldiers, Nazis invaded Poland, Denmark, Norway, and then Belgium, the Netherlands, and France. Each day they marched closer and closer to Bordeaux. People from invaded countries also journeyed on the crowded roads toward Bordeaux with all they could carry, frightened of the storm that was coming. They gathered outside Aristides' office, mothers, fathers, children, doctors, inventors, poets, families from all over Europe. They were refugees, driven from their homes, their countries, and everything they ever knew and loved. They wanted to survive. Spain was sympathetic to the Nazis. Portugal was their last hope. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about the process of my work in general and just some of the process about this book. And I definitely wanted to share a fun fact is that this was my very first book that I ever wrote, but it's the fourth one that has been published. And just generally speaking, for my writing process in general, I do spend a lot of time going through research any project, and I did the same here, trying to do as thorough research as I can before I write anything. But as I develop a book, it does change a lot from the start to the finish, and that was definitely the case with The World Entire. It did go through multiple drafts. I did do a lot of feedback, getting feedback in writing workshops, critiques, and things like that, showing it to my agent. And once I did complete the book, that's when I did send it out. Since it has come out, I have done numerous school visits and presentations. And here, this is a photo of a recent visit at the American Writers Museum in Chicago, where I did have several classrooms of children coming to hear about the journey of the book and to hear a reading of it. And it was very rewarding to share this with young children. Other books that I have written is Dancing Through Fields of Color. That's the story of Helen Frankenthaler, who was an artist who developed her own artistic painting style called color field painting. The book is published by Abrams Books for Young Readers, and it was illustrated by Amy Sakuro. And it won numerous awards, but one of the ones that I'm most proud of is that it was a best book for the New York Public Library. And also my next one is Like a Diamond in the Sky, which was published by Bloomsbury Books for kids. And it is the story of Jane Taylor, who was a poet in the Victorian age, who did struggle to get work published because she was a woman. One of her most famous is a poem called The Star, and that was actually the words that became the song. So the book is how Twinkle Twinkle Little Star really became a song. And then finally, this book, also The Right to Play, was about how Jane Addams fought for America's playgrounds. She was a co-founder of Hull House in Chicago and also developed one of the first model playgrounds in America, and then fought to develop more playgrounds for children across America, and also at the same time fighting against child labor. And other books and projects that I'm working on are currently some more nonfiction picture books in middle grades. I'm also working on a memoir and some personal essays. And I have a background in film, so I'm also working on a screenplay that's based on a manuscript that I wrote. I think it's going to ultimately be a book also, but I decided to create it into a screenplay because I feel like it will be ultimately better as a movie than a book, but still in the determining factors on that. And yeah, that's it. Here's my contact info. There are some additional things in the book, and that you can also find on my website, which is an educator guide. And I also have in the back of the book an author's note, and there's a lot of sources, timeline, and other information that could be helpful to understand more about the story. Thank you so much.
So now are you going to do a second reading?
Yes, I am going to do a second reading, and I am going to start where it does happen to be that the Portuguese Prime Minister Aristides had asked to get visas, but he was always being denied. And so I'm going to be starting there, which was the next page from where I left off. So over the mountains in Portugal, the Prime Minister didn't want to take care of any refugees. While Portugal officially took no side in the war, its leaders were not interested in helping the people fleeing the Nazi army. The Prime Minister had ordered Portugal's diplomats not to give visas to anyone hoping to escape. Aristides asked his government permission to grant visas anyway. No. When more families came, he asked again. No, no, no. Each day, more and more people, hundreds at a time, arrived at the grand stone building by the river, begging for visas. They waited outside on the street, down the city block, never leaving their place in line, fearful of losing their chance. Again, Aristides asked if he could issue visas. Again, his government refused. At night, Aristides was driven around Bordeaux, stopping here and there to see the growing numbers of stranded refugees. He met a rabbi, a refugee himself, who was helping Jewish families at a local synagogue. Soon, Aristides and the rabbi became the best of friends. The rabbi explained what would happen to the refugees if they did not receive visas. Many would be captured by the Nazis. They would be sent to camps to be tortured and killed. Families would be separated and children taken away. Aristides offered the rabbi and his family visas, but the rabbi shook his head. It is not just my family who needs help, he said, but all my fellow Jews who are in danger for their lives. Aristides grew sick with worry. For 3 days, he wrung his hands. He paced his apartment. He heard the rabbi's words echo in his head. Outside the consulate, more and more families gathered each day. Panic spread. Refugees pounded on the door and shouted to the windows, "Help us! Save us! We must get to Portugal!" Aristides tossed and turned in his bed. He thought about what it would be like if his family were in the same situation. How could he live with himself if he didn't help? What if all these children were his own? On the third day, Aristides gathered his family around him. Together, they created a production line inside his office. Then Aristides flung open the doors onto the street. "From now on, I will give visas to everyone," he announced. "Next person, please." Refugees lined up outside the office, down the stairs, in the hallway, and in the dining room, sleeping on chairs, the floor, the rugs, and the streets. A family of musicians? Yes. An engineer? Yes. A professor, an artist? Yes, yes. A mother, a carpenter, a child? Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
That was wonderful. So we're going to hear a third reading from you a little later, right?
Yes, definitely.
So right now, let me just explain to the audience how they can order the book, and Elizabeth will be happy to inscribe it to the dedicatee of your choice. So once you order the book, we will reach out to you and you'll let us know how you want it inscribed and where you would like it sent. So our wonderful intern Robin is putting into the chat the link as to how you can get your own signed and inscribed copy. And I think he's going to do that a few times. So have no fear. And also in the thank you message after today's program, you'll get the link again. So there'll be no escaping that link. We do want you to get a copy of the book. So right now we're going to hear from Melissa. She's going to tell us about her process, how she came to this book, and what she did with it. Melissa, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Olivia, for having me, and to the De Sousa Mendes Foundation as well. So yes, I had the absolute pleasure of illustrating Elizabeth's text and this amazing book. And we'll talk to you a little bit about what I do as an illustrator, the kind of books that I did before I did this book, and also the process of making this amazing book and bringing it to life. So yeah, so the kind of work that I create, that a lot of people that know my work, is very bright, very floral, lots of botanical worlds that I create. So this is the first book that I also wrote, called Mighty Min, about a tiny girl that lives at the bottom of the garden. And so I love very bright color palettes and floral designs, and some other work that I've created. So yeah, The Balcony. This is the second book. It's a wordless picture book. And again, as you can see, very bright, very botanical, kind of fantastical worlds that I love to create. So, and then this is the latest book to come out. It came out just after The World Entire. Leave the Trees, Please, written by the amazing British poet Benjamin Zephaniah. And I worked on this book and The World Entire at the same time, which was quite an amazing thing because both books tackle subjects which are very close to my heart. So the Leave the Trees, Please is about conservation and saving green spaces, and The World Entire is about humanity before humanity as the primary reason for life, really, for living. So working on these two books at the same time was a very special thing. So yeah, so as you can imagine, I was quite surprised when they asked me to illustrate this book because it's very people heavy, which is not my most comfortable. Drawing people isn't my most comfortable place. so it was a real challenge to illustrate this book. Not only it was also the longest book I've ever illustrated. It's about twice the length of a regular picture book. And so I love a challenge. So I jumped for joy at this story. So I said, yes, I would love to illustrate this story. So I started by drawing lots and lots of people and drawing Aristides and his family. These are some sketchbook pages of the development of Aristides. This is me trying to draw his family in context. So this is trying to develop the first spread where we introduced Aristides and his family. And I used a lot of reference photos for the development of this book. This is a photo of Aristides, which I drew over and over and over again to try and get him right. And it took quite a while before I was satisfied with how he was looking. And again, lots of reference photos that I used. This book, all the tiny intricate details visually had to be exactly right because everything is based in fact. So I had to make sure that his house had the right number of windows and everything had to be perfect. And same for his family, because the book spans quite a lot of time, and so his children grow up. Some aren't there at certain periods because obviously they've flown the nest. And he had a lot of children, so I had a lot of fun drawing them and trying to make sure that they look right and the right age at right points in the book. So I love composition. This is one of my favorite parts of creating a book. This is I like to be able to figure out where the text is going to fit nicely within the imagery, not just an afterthought. So this spread, I place the text in the woman's skirt. So as a designer, illustrator and designer, the design aspect of it is one of my favorite parts. So these are more sketchbooks, trying to figure out where the text is going to fit within the imagery. So the text are the lines. You can see me trying to jot it out and figure out how it will flow nicely from page to page. So this is my favorite spread in the book. I went from drawing flowers in my previous books and trying to avoid drawing people to a book where the importance of drawing the people who are the central part of the story, their plight and their suffering. It was so important for me to get that right. And so I think this is my favorite spread because because you've got so many individual stories within all these different people. And yeah, so this is my favorite spread in the book. I spent a lot of time just drawing people from using good old internet and trying to find actual photos from World War II and from refugees and drawing them and then placing them within the context of the story and trying to fit them in. This is them putting them into context in my sketchbook. It's probably my second favorite spread, actually. So because there's a lot going on in Aristides' head, not everything is necessarily rooted in fact. So this is him imagining, dreaming about horrors that could potentially happen to his family and if they were in the same situation. So I had a lot of it was yeah, a real challenge, but really enjoyable to be able to try and represent that in all sorts of different ways. Here's more sketchbook work of refugees. I drew a lot of women because I felt like it was a large large portion of women, and I just become a mother. So I just had a baby as I was doing all of these sketches as well. So that's why I've drawn a lot of children and women with babies. So yes, this is an amazing etching of Bordeaux in 1940. So at the time, just the crowds. So with my work, I love negative space and allowing the images to breathe. So, but I also wanted to kind of to show as many people and as the environment as much as possible. So my work is kind of pared back, but trying to show how there's how built it up it was with refugees trying to seek refuge. And this, yes, another reference image to make sure that I got all the vehicles right. So yeah, had lots of toing and froing in a good way with the publisher and my art director, trying to make sure that everything was factually accurate, including how the cars looked. So this is a vintage visual reference that I used, which and hands are hard to draw. So I use this visual reference to first draw as you'll see in the next spread, the image, the hand within the book of Aristides doing his signature, which he shortened to Mendes. And that actually formed the front cover. He wasn't actually, it's just his hand on the front cover because it's the depth and the importance of what he was doing with signing his signature and how many lives he saved just by doing that. Which is why I wanted that to be on the front cover. So yeah, again, this is me playing with composition. Probably my third favorite spread. So this is me playing with color, which leads me on to talking about color. I love color. And so the color was really important with trying to visually communicate the story. The bulk of the story where it's in World War II is pared back color-wise. Aristides is in bright yellow so that you know it's him and he's like the beacon of light. And then everything else is very dulled back. So when the visual turning of the page here is where the color comes back, where finally the refugees are let through the border, so that they can find refuge in other countries. Yes, and this is another little sketchbook thing, just to show you more of how I develop it in tiny little thumbnails within my sketchbook. And these little thumbnails turn it into a full storyboard, which I can then use to develop the color. And then I do little thumbnails of color. This is me trying to figure out, again, yeah, how it's going to work. So colorful at the beginning, colorful at the end, and then paired back in the middle where there's the World War II is happening. So these are the color roughs, which I give to the publisher. And then I do line roughs, which I then use a light box to go over the top of these to do the final artwork, which is in 5 color layers. So this is the final artwork. And I chose five color layers, and each layer is done separately with a graphite pencil, then scanned in and digitally colored, and then put all together to form the final image. So yes, I like to make life hard for myself. And yes, this is me. This is some links if you're interested in seeing any more of my work, any more of my books. Yeah, thank you for listening.
Wonderful. Well, your images are just absolutely luscious. I mean,
Thank
this is a luxurious book. Um, it's not often that you find a book for young kids with raised lettering. I mean, it's just such a pleasure to hold the book, to turn the pages. And I wish I had a young child. Mine is 26 years old. I can't read him bedtime stories anymore. So, but I do urge people to order the book. We're putting the link again into that chat box. And before I turn the floor back to Elizabeth, I want to make the point that prior to this process of our preparing today's show, Elizabeth and Melissa had never met,
Yeah.
communicated only via the publisher. Elizabeth wrote her words, delivered them to, I guess, her agent, her publisher, and then the publisher found Melissa, who then worked. So I'm just delightful to have made this introduction, and finally for you to be in the same room, quote unquote, with each other. You're both such wonderful people. Elizabeth, let me turn it back to you and have you do your final reading.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to be starting where we did leave off. Aristides is in the middle of signing visas, and we begin to see that whole process and the struggle that he goes through while he's doing it. So I'll go ahead and start. One girl brought a diamond to Aristides to pay for a visa, telling him that her parents had been killed. Quick, hide that in your pocket, Aristides said to the child. He fed the girl, gave her a visa, and arranged for a group of refugees to take her to safety. Aristides worked faster and faster. Every second wasted was another visa he could have issued. As Nazis got closer, more families arrived. Aristides' wife comforted a mother, helped a crying child, and offered water to the people standing in line. Aristides' sons and nephew helped him stamp visas. Aristides signed visa after visa after visa after visa. The more ink that flowed from his pen, the more lives he might be able to save. He shortened his signature to Mendes, hoping to make the ink last long enough to save them all. Minute after minute, hour after hour, family after family, they pressed on. Aristides' back ached. His neck and shoulders were stiff. His writing hand cramped. But he had to make visas for all the refugees he could before the Portuguese government sent policemen to stop him. For 5 days and 4 nights, they stamped and Aristides signed until no more families climbed up the stairs. Only one family remained, his own. Aristides hugged them more tightly than ever before and sent his sons and nephew home to Portugal. The radio announced the news. German troops were only miles from Bordeaux. Closer to the border, the Portuguese consulate in Bayonne was overwhelmed by refugees. Aristides had authorized the vice consul there to issue visas, but there were too many people, and there wasn't much time. He told Aristides that he needed help. Aristides drove to Bayonne as fast as he could. The consulate was flooded with people trying to escape to Portugal. So Aristides quickly set up a table on the street. He stamped and signed all night long, sure by now that Portuguese police knew what he was doing and would come for him. But he worked until his fingers trembled from exhaustion and until as many people as he could help held a visa in their hand. When the German army advanced into Bayonne, Aristides turned his car toward Hendaye at the northernmost border between France and Spain. There, Spain had sealed the bridge that linked France to Spain, and the Spanish guards refused to let any refugees cross who held visas. So, Aristides led the families through the hillsides on a quiet back road he had often taken as a shortcut between Portugal and France. He brought them to a small border crossing hidden in the hills, far enough away that the guards would not yet have received orders to turn away those holding visas signed by him. "I am the Portuguese consul," Aristides shouted. "These people are with me." The guards checked each visa, one at a time, each name, each face, each stamp. Finally, they waved the refugees on. Aristides opened the border fence and the refugees crossed into Spain. From there, they would continue on to Portugal, where the sun-baked hills could encircle them, and the ocean waves in Lisbon's harbor could carry them to new countries and new lives. It was time for Aristides to return to Portugal as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. So audience members, please continue typing your questions into the chat box. We will get to as many of your questions as we can. And I'm going to take this opportunity to tell you a little bit about what we have upcoming at the Sousa Mendes Foundation. So obviously holidays are coming up. And so if there are young people in your life, or maybe anyone that you would like to introduce to the amazing story of the rescue action of Aristides de Sousa Mendes, this book does it in such a gentle and beautiful way that I can't urge you enough to get your own signed and inscribed copy. Someone was asking about whether Melissa too could sign the copy. Melissa's in the UK, and so it's hard for us to ship the books to her and have her ship them back to someone in the US. If you are in the UK and you prefer Melissa's signature, or you wish to have her signature, we might be able to arrange that, but it's difficult if you're ordering from the US. Hope that makes sense. So what we have upcoming is we have one more program for you, and that's coming up in 3 weeks' time on December 7th, 2025, Pearl Harbor Day, the anniversary of Pearl Harbor. We're not focusing on the Pearl Harbor story, we're focusing on something else. This is a film that we're showing called Shishinet. Shishinet was the nickname of this French woman who also spoke fluent German. She lived in the part of France called Alsace, where children in a certain period of time grew up speaking both French and German. So her German was fluent. She was able during World War II to go behind enemy lines. Here she was, a French Jewish girl. She was actually able to go into Germany and pose as a German nurse and gather intelligence for the French army. And some of the intelligence that she gathered was decisive in the Allies winning the war. It's really quite an amazing story that she didn't talk about for decades, but she was heavily honored by France. She was given so many medals. We too are going to give her our own honor. We like to honor somebody at the end of our year of programs. So she's no longer with us. She just died at age 105 a few months ago, but we will have her son, and so he will represent the family. And it's a wonderful film, and you won't want to miss the discussion. Also, if you like what we do and you want to keep enjoying these stories of inspiration, we do have a way for you to get a season ticket for 2026. So when you sign up for the December program, you have a choice. Sign up just for that program or get yourself a season ticket for the entire next year, and that will include the December program. So right now we're going to see a little trailer of the film Shishinet.
Vous avez quel âge? Ah, vous
96 ans.
96 ans? Eh ben, vous avez du vécu alors.
I am extremely busy because I give talks all over the United States and in Europe.
Chichinette, une espionne au service de la France.
Et a fait parvenir des renseignements militaires du plus grand intérêt qui ont facilité le succès de l'armée française en Forêt-Noire.
Il y a beaucoup de femmes qui étaient résistantes, voire combattantes, et je ne vois aucun nom de femmes sur les monuments morts.
Le monument mort ne peut pas avoir mon nom, je ne suis pas. J'ai essayé 13 fois de traverser le front. J'étais toute seule. Pour la première fois de ma vie, je vivais sans ma famille. Ma sœur Stéphie, elle a été déportée. Je me suis sentie responsable. Personne ne parlait de la guerre, alors je n'en parlais pas.
She is so gung-ho. It's what drives her and keeps her alive.
What's your message to people today?
I say be engaged and don't accept any order that your conscience could not prove.
Je me permets de vous faire un petit bisou.
Bien sûr. Mon mari n'est pas jaloux.
So it's a delightful film about this wonderful woman. She's teeny tiny. She's like 4 foot tall, but what a giant in what she did. And she has the same message as does Sousa Mendes and as do we at the Sousa Mendes Foundation, which is follow your conscience. It's a beautiful message. And I didn't give you her name. Her name is Mart Cohn. That's who she was. And there's a big New York Times obituary about her that you can read if you Google her name. And what a story. So let's get to audience questions. First question is one that I've been wondering about, and so does our audience, and that is for both of you. What is the right age group for this book?
I guess I could take that first. I think it's all ages, really. So another interesting fact, when I first started writing it, I actually didn't know what age group I was going to write it for. I mean, I thought it should be more for like middle grade, which would be 8 to 12-year-olds. But then I was like, well, maybe it should be young adult, which would be 13 and over. But then I ultimately decided to do it as a picture book because I can reach so many more readers. It had gone through sensitivity reads with the publisher so that it would be appropriate for even youngest children. Probably the sweet spot for this is grades 3, 4, 5, if you're looking for a target age, but of course it can be even older, and definitely adults will enjoy the book as well.
What do you think, Melissa?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's really interesting with this picture book because I gave it to my dad and he loved it, and he said that if he saw it in a bookshop, he'd be so happy just to buy it. And I think it spans all ages. It's quite hard because picture books are seen as something for children, but I think people are coming round to the idea that you can, as an adult you can buy it, as a teenager you can buy it. I think it's really important to not underestimate children and their ability to grapple with subjects like this. So I think it's fantastic that it's in a picture book format so that parents can buy it for their children.
Okay. So another question is also really for both of you, and that is, well, how does one tackle a book for children, if it is for children, on a difficult subject matter? I mean, it's a story of rescue, optimism, inspiration. You do mention Nazis a few times in the text, so it makes the child ask the parents, Mommy, what's a Nazi? So, I mean, how do you handle it as an author and as an artist? How do you handle difficult subject matter, or is it the same as handling any other subject matter?
I definitely feel that I wanted to be very clear and open and not try to paint something different than what happened. So, and it was also a conversation, definitely with my editor to make sure that we were telling it in a way that will be factual and not covering up the truth, because we do want people to know about it, but it also took a lot of revising to really make sure that message comes through, and just making sure that we are reaching the right audience that it's marketed to, but also telling it in a way that teachers, librarians, parents will be able to utilize it in a way that could be a teaching tool and part of the curriculum. And again, the educator guide is available both on the internet by Googling, and it's also on my website. And that does help to bridge the gap, especially for parents, librarians, teachers.
Melissa, how would you answer that question?
Yeah, I think it was important for me to, because Elizabeth's text was obviously the primary guide to my visuals, to developing it. And the majority of the story is focused on Aristides and the refugees. So there wasn't very much within the book where, and I never wanted to feature visually too much in the book, the Nazis themselves, to give them space, really. So I only gave them space when it was important to get across what Aristides was fighting for and what the refugees were fleeing. And so I think the only one part in the book really where I give them any visuals is when he's talking to the rabbi, and you see them there, and again it's kind of they're more like specters, so I not so much people but more like specters. So yeah, I think it was thanks to like Elizabeth's text and the fact that it centers around Aristides that there wasn't really a huge amount of worry or space to yeah. Does that answer your question? I think.
Well, I mean, you use the swastika symbol, sort of.
Yes.
Highlights.
Yes, that is to show who they are, basically. And it's the unfortunate visual thing that shows who they are. Otherwise, yeah, it's more of a clarity rather than it's in kind of a clarity necessity rather than something that we necessarily as it's not an embellishment, it's like a necessity, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to pick up on something, Elizabeth, that you mentioned, which is you mentioned curricular stuff and teacher stuff. So in the back of the book, there is all kinds of wonderful supplemental materials. I particularly love this page on quotes and sources. It has flags of all these different countries. A lot of people don't realize, and in fact, it's only thanks to the research of our foundation, Sousa Mendes Foundation, that people now know that Sousa Mendes rescued refugees from 49 countries. 49 countries. I mean, that's astounding. Not just French refugees or Belgian or, German or Polish, but 49 countries. That's amazing, unbelievable what he did. And then people found refuge in 20 or so countries of destination. So this story is truly a global story. And you capture that in these quotes and sources at the back, and you have a timeline, and you have an author's note. So if you're a teacher or you know a teacher, this is such a great resource for the classroom. So that's another whole category of people that can benefit from this book. Melissa or Elizabeth, I don't know if you want to say anything more about that aspect.
Well, I definitely wanted to, and usually with a nonfiction picture book, we do have back matter that will take it into discussions, show more, explain why the story was written. This one does, because of the subject matter, also require more. So it's a very extensive back matter, which also created some of the length of this picture book. But it was necessary to give a little bit more context to everything, and also have it speak to a wide variety of ages, because again, this can be used in middle schools, high schools. I think even some college campuses are utilizing this book for various courses. And it does also, you get to learn a lot about, World War II in general from the story. And it also helps to give context to other things that are going on in other times of history as well as today.
Now, Elizabeth, someone wants to know, and I also want to know, how do you choose the subjects for your books? I mean, you said this was your first book project, the most recent to come to fruition, but how did you come to this story, our story?
Yeah, that's always a good question. So, fun fact, again, there's a lot of fun facts with this book. I started the process of researching. The first time I ever heard of Aristides de Sousa Mendes was in 2013. At that time, my daughter was 5 years old, and I hadn't really written anything in like 5 years, because just this first caring for a child in those opening years was very challenging. I was always tired. I couldn't do any writing. I was also working. So finally, when she was going into kindergarten, I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to my writing, because I was a writing teacher and also, have been a writer for a while. So I really wanted to focus on writing for children, because having seen all these lovely picture books that, my daughter wrote, I really love nonfiction picture books. So that's why I decided to take a nonfiction picture book writing course, because I felt like I had to kind of get back into the swing of writing. I needed to start fresh. I definitely had already, when I signed up, knew about Aristides, and I had seen multiple films, and I read as much as I could. During the process of writing this, it did span quite a few years. The book was sold in 2017, spring of 2017. I started to do revisions with my editor in 2018, and sort of soon after that, I think Melissa came on board as the illustrator, and then it did have additional, revisions. I was really just inspired by this story. I don't know, I was just like captivated with his story, and the whole, process of writing really came from that. It did take a long time, because now when it came out in September of 25, my daughter is in her senior year of high school. So of course I was working on many other projects. I wasn't working on this just only because I had all these other books, and I have other books that are coming. But you can kind of see that this book did take a lot longer, just because I do remember in the process of writing, there was more and more that was being found out, and the Sousa Mendes Foundation kept putting more information. I kept reading in New York Times articles. I think the Smithsonian had, and it would just like, it was an avalanche of new material that I kind of kept revising at the same time. So it was a journey of the book, but it is well worth it. So I was happy to do it. In terms of just to answer that question a little bit more, I find people that I want to write about who really just inspire me in some way. Like, for instance, Helen Frankenthaler. I took, a lot of art history when I was in college, and I always loved her paintings. And I thought also that would be a great artist to do a picture book on. In terms of why did I choose Jane Taylor and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, I'm also a professional violinist, and a lot of teaching that I've done with children, we start with Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and one day I'm like, why do we have this song? Like, where did this song come from? And that sort of inspired the book. And yeah, in terms of playgrounds, I always loved Jane Addams, and a lot of her ideals and things she stood for. And then I lived across the street from a playground for 20 years. And so I was like, how do we have playgrounds? Why do we have them? What's the story behind them? We always see them. How can I write a book about this? And then I dived into it. So they really just come from thoughts, and they're definitely part of my life. And I do feel like in many ways, a lot of my stories have some type of relevance to each other, because there's always definitely somebody who is trying to overcome something, some type of very big struggle that they have to go through. And hopefully, by that, their life is bettered and they're changing the world in some way.
That's wonderful. Elizabeth, I'm going to take that as your final thought, and I'm going to turn the floor
Okay.
to Melissa. What would you like
Yes.
to say today in closing, Melissa, to our audience?
Yeah, I want to thank, my final thought is how amazing is it that we have a picture book on this amazing human who did this amazing thing, and that we are giving children the ability to digest this, and the fact that it's a picture book is really important, because to not underestimate children's ability to um, take on these subjects, because it's really important to show them humanity from a very young age, and examples of that. And yes, thank you for Elizabeth for writing it. Thank you for Chronicle for publishing it. Thank you for the Sousa Mendes Foundation for shouting out about it as well.
Okay, so we have these two wonderful, powerful women on our program today, and I'm going to take that as the launching point to tell you a little bit about our next year's season. Where it happens, we're focusing specifically on powerful women, in addition to the stories that we always present of rescue, resistance, and hope. So we're going to show you just a tiny little video, a 1-minute video of what you can expect next year when you join us again. Great. Well, it's been a delightful hour, and I wanted to thank so much Elizabeth Brown and Melissa Castrillón for producing this dynamic, wonderful, important book, I would say. Thank you to our audience. See you again December 7th. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody. Be well. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.